Ever had anybody ask you how to glue up an oddball angle? Today I'm going to show you how to do that. Yesterday at lunch, my buddy Mike, who comes down here to the shop pretty regular and hangs out and makes some cool stuff, becoming a real good woodworker, asked a question. And today I'm going to give you the answer, and I'm also going to tell you that if you've got questions on how to do something and you want to learn from them, just put them down in the comments down below and we'll do a video specifically answering your question. So with that, what Mike was asking is he's making a table. He does one every year for a military benefit auction that he participates in. And this year he wants to take 3 pieces of 30-inch long material, put 15-degree bevels on the edges and put them together to form kind of an oddball shape for the legs. He didn't know how to glue those up, so he asked me. And what I did is I mocked up what his table base was going to look like. And I told him, Mike, come over to the shop and I'll show you how to do it. So the first thing we did is we took a board, we took it over to our table saw, being that he's going to use 15 degrees as the angle on all of his components. And we cut a board at 15 degrees, turned it inside out, and now we've got that angle. So the question ultimately gets to be, how do we glue something like that together and keep it stable? So I said, Mike, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put biscuits in here, so that when we're clamping that together, it can't slide one past the other. So I'm going to show you how to do that. We've got our angle cut on there. We've got to grab our biscuit joiner. And when you're making adjustments to your biscuit joiner, make sure it's unplugged first, so you don't make the mistake of hitting that trigger and having a blade get in the way. And we're going to open up the mouth for our piece here. We're going to set it at our 15-degree angle. So what I want to accomplish here is I want to get the fence here set to the same angle as our cut's already done. So I put it on there. I loosened up the keeper on the fence, and I'm sliding it over now until I've got that fence here. Oh, it's flush here on our face and it's flush on our piece there. So we've got our perfect angle set up right there that you can see. That's how we get our angle. Now I'm going to take my pieces, I'm going to grab a pencil back here off of the pins, and I'm going to mark where I want my biscuits to be. And I'm going to use my inside as my reference point, because if they're off just a little bit on the front, I can sand it. If they're off on the inside just a touch, it's harder to sand there. So I'm going to use my inside as my reference point. And when I go to cut this, I'll put my little red line on there. I'll set that on. I'll cut that angle there. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us our biscuit slot somewhere about in here like that. That's where our biscuit slot will sit. So I've got to be closer to the inside edge than the outside, so I don't end up coming through that outside with my cutter. I've got that. I've got my depth set where I want it.
How do you determine your depth?
I determine my depth by setting this on there and deciding where on that face of that piece that I wanted it to be. So I'm a little closer to my reference surface than I am to the center, but that's plenty close enough there. So now that I've got that set where I want it to be, I'm going to go ahead and plug this in quick. I always use a number 20 size biscuit. That's just a personal preference, and I've never seen the need for any other size, so I don't even keep them in the stock.
Is that the bigger ones or smaller ones?
That's the biggest one that you can get in there. And I'm going to take my piece here. I'm going to have it hanging over the edge of my bench just a little bit, because I want this surface of my board to be my reference point on the bottom of my fence here. Whereas if I had it on the hanging over the table, there's a possibility of this face hitting my table, my bench top, and using my bench top as my point of reference. It's got to be the top here. So I always just hang it over a little bit. I'm going to put it down here, hold it nice and tight, and then I'm going to hit my trigger, and I'm going to plunge in there nice and slow, nice and easy. Here we go. And once I'm done making my cut, I allow my blade to retract back into the body. So it goes away, keeps it nice and safe. I'm going to go down here and do the exact same thing. So on the other end, we're going to cut that hole. We'll go over here and get the other two exactly the same way. And ultimately, by having this at the angle, what I'm really doing is I'm creating my biscuit slot that's perfectly 90 degrees from this face versus this one. Let's make that last cut. There we have the last cut. And what we'll do is we'll dry fit this. Setting my biscuit in there, my biscuit in there. Set those on there. And now I have perfect alignment. These faces are perfect. These faces are perfect. That way, when I go to clamp this, it's not going to be able to move. It's going to be nice and snug in there. So those help a whole bunch with getting that in there. The next thing I'm going to want to do is I want to be able to clamp across this and put pressure on it to pull it together nice and tight. So what I like to do, kind of a neat old trick here, if I can find my tape. I'm going to put a piece of tape here, like that. And put another piece of tape here, not overlapping that seam itself. And then I've cut a couple blocks here, and I've cut that same matching 15-degree angle on that block. So when I set this on here, and I set this one opposite that, now what I've got is a perfect parallel surface here to clamp to and pull it together. Well, how am I going to get that to stick on there? I'm going to put tape on this surface as well. Like that. Not overlapping I put that on backwards, that's why. So I want my tape to be tight on this side of it. Like that. I can set that on there. I'm going to tape the other one the same way. If we go like that, then I'm going to take my pencil again and I'm going to mark where I put these. Like right there, end to end. This one over here, end to end like that. Let's set this one back up on there and do that again. I just want to know about where these are going to ultimately be set, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a good bit of super glue here, some tight bond that I really, really enjoy working with, and I'm going to put a bunch of tight bond on there. I'm going to put a bunch of this tight bond CA glue on there, and I probably put too much on, but that's okay. I'm going to spray the activator onto here like that. Set that on there. And now that's going to bond directly to that. And what it's going to do is it's basically attaching this clamp face, or this clamping block, to my board. Like that. Once that sets up, and I put way too much super glue on there, but it'll just take a little longer to bond, which is okay. That's going to be nice and solid. Let me walk over here. While that's setting up, I'm going to walk over here and grab a clamp real quick. Show you how we can pull those together with a pinch clamp. So let's assume that those are pretty solid, pretty stable. And now what I can do, once I get glue on my inside surfaces there, I can use that. Now I've got a parallel opportunity to put clamping pressure on those two pieces. Works out pretty quick. So that's one of the things that we're going to do. the other thing that we're going to do is, being that these are going to be table legs and the top and the bottom will not be seen, what I told Mike is, get yourself a couple pinch dogs.
What's a pinch dog, Tim?
Pinch dog is basically a really cool way to clamp stuff together. You pound these in, they're made of steel, and you'll notice they're tapered to the inside. So when I force them down into the end of my board, that tapering basically acts as a wedge and pulls those two faces together. Pulls it up nice and tight. Let's go do the other end exactly the same way. We'll set our pinch dogs in there.
It's like one of the very first primitive clamp types.
One of the very first real primitive types of clamps. I go ahead, and you can see how well that pulled that together. That's going to give us a whole lot of clamping pressure. And then for the remainder of it, I would put these, I'd probably line them up along there every couple inches, and I'll go ahead and use this to pull those together. And look at how nice that pulled up. That one released a little bit because I didn't have it all the way down on there, but this gives you a way attaching something that's temporary, and it gives you the opportunity to squeeze these together with clamps. And then when your glue is all set up and dried, you simply go in there, peel off the tape, because the tape is ultimately attached to the board, and the super glue or the tight bond is attached to the tape. So when you pull one off, you pull them all off, and now your piece is glued together, and what you used to clamp your boards together comes off. It leaves no indication that it was ever there before. So don't use as much of the super glue as I did, but that gives you an opportunity to go ahead and basically take an angled board like this and clamp it as if it was parallel. Why you can't do it without those on there is the pressure, particularly if these are a little longer, the pressure on there would end up pulling these together, and it would want to open that up. Particularly if you clamp it more from the inside like this, it's going to want to pull those things together on the inside, but it'll pull the outside apart.
Show me the outside.
So there's the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not as good as it could be, but there we go. When you use those are your clamping means, and the way you add a clamping surface to your boards that's temporary. So in Mike's situation, he's going to have 3 boards. So he borrowed a couple sets of pinch dogs from me. He's going to put them together. He's going to put his clamping blocks onto his board. He's going to glue the whole thing together, clamp it up, and right there he goes. His 3 pieces will come together as one. Easiest way to clamp something like that together when you've got an oddball shape is clamping blocks and pinch dogs.
What kind of super tape are you using to where you can apply clamp pressure without the tape peeling off?
This is just good old everyday masking tape. Just the store-bought regular old masking tape. Some guys will use painter's tape because painter's tape comes off easier than regular masking tape, but I just used to use masking tape because it's going to hold well enough. And if it gets to the point where it's too tight and it doesn't want to come off, or these don't want to come off of your board, that's what chisels are for. Knock it off with the chisel. So again, that's the answer to your question, Mike. I hope that helps you out a whole bunch. If you have questions on something you'd like to learn in your shop, put it down in the comments below, and we'll help you out the same way we just helped Mike solve his table base clamping up, gluing it together problem.